performance piece, Felt the Moonlight on My Feet, that Suzanna has been performing today. It started as a commission piece by Drop City, a kind of curatorial collective currently based in Antwerp, but back then based in Düsseldorf. And it was namely Sam Watson and Eleanor Wright, who run Drop City these days. So they were commissioned by Muka in Antwerp to make a group exhibition that included newly commissioned works by artists invited by them. So kind of Felt the Moonlight on My Feet kind of came out of this invitation and this collaboration, and I've been thinking of tap dance. I've been interested in it for a long time, even though I've never practiced it myself, but just the kind of nature of it and its relationship, I guess, to music and sound as well, because I think it's an interesting kind of, I often kind of am drawn to these forms which kind of resonate between things. So they're not clearly one thing or another, but they're kind of in between things. And I thought tap dance had this quality because it's obviously clearly categorized as dance, but it's also a kind of percussive instrument almost, tap dancing. And so I think that really triggered my imagination and my interest initially. And of course, I've been working a lot with, I guess you could generalize and say with language in a way. So that kind of led me to thinking about Morse code as a kind of language which is really based on rhythm and a kind of, lent itself really well to actually to how tap dance is generated or works. I always was thinking that I'd like to try out something which is more organic, something that happens more like paradoxically, maybe something that is less performative in a kind of traditional, like audience performer kind of sense. So it's something which happens in space and is not directed to a clear audience as such. I became interested in the idea of the prefix as words which are kind of like almost as words which are in a way insufficient on their own, like they need to latch on to something in order to alter the meaning of that other word. So it's like often it's about denying something or like adding something. The prefix was really they were very interesting, and also just as used as single words without that meaning in a way, and also to kind of play with that, like what are they once they go through this process of translation or this sort of morphing or transition from one thing to another, etc. So though I think those are really essential idea, like related to this. And I think also like increasingly so in my work, it's also, I'm often interested in questions of like legibility and illegibility. And I think like early on, I was often kind of worried because I often work with appropriation. So there's often like material is loaded in a way with meaning because it's derived from like a particular source or something. And I was often worried maybe how that meaning translate or is carried on, or how those narratives are sort of understood by the audience. And I think I'm kind of actually more and more interested in how those meanings are broken and become illegible, and that what does that mean then, when you can't kind of understand in a way, when you're denied that understanding of something. And I think that's something I'm really increasingly working on with also a lot of the woodcuts, and the other work, which is based maybe on some sort of signage or glyphs or fonts or whatever kind of scripts.
Could you maybe further explain what is that interest in having something that has meaning and then creating something that loses that meaning in the process?
I've always been interested in this idea of like the questioning maybe subjectivity as well, that there's sort of what is it really, and that it doesn't actually sort of exist in a way, and so I think it is linked to that idea, to kind of breaking that linkage to something, and also like maybe denying it its original meaning and kind of forcing the audience to see it anew in a way. Like with the fonts, the fact that their nature as that they are images, but they are also a linguistic sign. So they have this kind of duality or multiplicity about them, and I was quite happy working with that in a way, with this kind of ambiguity that is imbued in them in a way, especially when you extract something from the totality of an alphabet. And then I've become increasingly interested in actually like denying that link to what they originally represent in a way. So, by twisting them or turning them, breaking them up in a way, like quite literally, they're kind of given a chance to be seen as images. I mean, that's also something maybe I was trying to do with a lot of the object-based works, where I worked with kind of found images, and I worked with these images that maybe represented some type of objects and actually made them into physical, usable, performative objects, or objects that at least had some sort of performative potential. So also that was a lot about kind of reframing them, recontextualizing them, allowing them to be reinterpreted. Yeah, when you extract something from its context, and it allows you to see it differently, and to kind of read it in a rather different way, and maybe something can emerge from that.
Jani, is that also the similar way you work with the video, the big video here with 4 screens? Like, are there references to existing material that you then recontextualize as well?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And in many ways, it's, of course, that's quite a layered piece, and there are multiple references. And of course, it's really specifically working with kind of the idea of signs, icons, symbols. They kind of work together, and what emerges from, I've always been really interested in things like mimicry, for instance, things like sort of posing as something other, or kind of finding alterity in something when you're trying to inhabit another, like whatever it is, like an object.
Maybe you also want to speak further about TARWE and WALNOOT, and you chose a title in Dutch.
Yeah. Also with these titles, I started to play a bit more, because in the past I was working with the woodcuts. I wanted to kind of really kind of hold on to this link between what the woodcut is representing and what it is implying, like originally signifying, especially because as sort of larger scale woodcuts extracted from like a family of whatever fonts or alphabets, they actually did become like images, and they're really difficult to read as typographic signs, I guess. So, they're often and always, pretty much always, I name them for U for ultramarine, S for sepia. And I kind of also tried to find a linkage between the materiality of the pigment or the color. So it would actually also be like an additional layer, an additional material kind of imprinted on that particular like piece. So language really, when you don't have an understanding of it, it becomes you can sort of experience it in a different way. You can experience it as sound, as something more abstract, something as more interpretative, something more speculative. And so I think it frees up the imagination as well.